Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So, as I was saying, to get this day two off to a good start, we have with us Mr. Ravi Dharamshi, Mr. Aniruddha Sarkar, who are going to be discussing the art of spotting the right businesses at the right time and which are the right ones for the current times. Now, this session will be moderated by Mr. Amit Mantri. Let me introduce our panelists to all of you. We have with us Mr. Ravi Dharamshi, the founder and CIO of Value Quest Investment Advisors. He has an MBA in finance from McCallum Business School, US. He returned from the US after a brief internship stint at Solomon Smith Barney. He has been associated with the Indian stock markets for over 21 years. And after graduating, he worked his way up through the stock market business, spending 4 years at Rare Enterprises under the aegis of Rakesh Jhunjhunwala and Utpal Sheth, where he was involved with in-depth research and private equity deals. Welcome, Mr. Dharamshi. Let me now introduce you to our next panelist, Mr. Aniruddha Sarkar, the CIO and Portfolio Manager at Quest Investment Advisors. Now, he comes down with over 13 years of experience in the Indian equity markets, managing investors' money. Prior to Quest, he was associated with IIFL for 11 and a half years. At IIFL AMC, he had launched the IIFL Multi-Cap PMS, which he managed for 5 years before leaving in January 2020. He has been instrumental in generating significant alpha and outperformance for his clients over the years. And he has a keen eye for identifying trends in the market early on and believes alpha creation comes from being ahead of the curve in identifying the trends in the economy and market. Welcome, Mr. Sarkar. This session, ladies and gentlemen, will be moderated by Mr. Amit Mantri, who is the co-founder of 2.2 Capital, a SEBI-registered portfolio manager. 2.2 Capital was started in 2016 and currently manages more than 650 crores in assets. He has over 11 years of investing experience across private equity and public markets. Previously, he was a vice president at Hornbill Capital, a Mumbai-based long-short hedge fund, and he has a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Bangalore and a BTech in computer science and engineering from IIT Kharagpur. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mantri is also a CFA charter holder. I extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Amit Mantri, and I hand over the proceedings in his able hands. Sir, take it away.
Thank you very much, Aishwarya. Thank you to the entire PMS AIF team for inviting me to this panel. I really look forward to moderating it and learning from Ravi and Anirudh. Ravi, Anirudh, let me first of all welcome you to the panel.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Amit.
Yeah, hi. So just, so the last 1 year obviously has been a bit crazy. And, in fact, the current panel might seem for a lot of people, it might not be necessary given how the last 1 year has behaved, because anything that you have bought, whether whichever sector that you might have bought, whichever stocks that you might have bought, you've ended up making a reasonable amount of money. As long as you were invested in the market, things turned out okay. But, we all of us know that this is not how markets perform over the longer term. And we have seen this kind of situations before where entire markets are going up, every stock is going up, good, bad, ugly. But then eventually there comes a time when only performance matters, wherein if the businesses that are delivering reasonable profits, cash flows, only they end up delivering reasonable returns. So it's important to not get carried away by the events of the last, say, 12 to 15 months and start believing that, anything and everything will do well in the equity markets. And I think there couldn't be anyone better than Ravi and Anirudh to talk about this. So let me add a little bit to what Aishwarya said. So that it's even more important that Ravi and Anirudh are here, because both of them have been managing portfolios for more than a decade now. And the portfolios that they manage, Ravi at ValueQuest and Anirudh at Quest, they're among the few PMSs which have a 10-year plus track record, and they are in the best performing portfolio managers in this period. So they have seen multiple cycles. They have seen the tough periods of 2013, the taper tantrum. They have seen the Modi rally. They have seen the demonetization and the China crash that happened in 2016, and then they have seen the 2017 small cap rally, 2018 crash that happened, and now over the last 18 months, the COVID crash and recovery. So they have seen multiple ups and downs, so should be able to give us a really good handle on how we should think about investing in current times. So how to go about identifying businesses to invest in as of now. So Ravi, let me start with you, and a very general and broad question. So how do you choose businesses to invest in current times? What's the investment process?
Thanks, Amit. That was a wonderful recap of the last decade. Honestly speaking, whatever the terrain is at the moment or whatever the weather conditions are, one still has to find a strong enough boat to ride in. So our framework does not change with the change in the terrain or the change in the weather. So we have a very simplistic framework, and I don't think some variation of the same would be applied by any seasoned investor out there, which is you have to look at the opportunity size, the business quality, good management, and valuation. So it's only the difference is only how much weightage you give to what while choosing a business to invest in. Essentially, this framework distills, and I won't say that there is a right business, so to say. I would say there are opportunities, and you have to pick the right opportunities to invest in. Yes, you have to have a minimum bar where you will not venture into a business or a company where the business is only on paper. And I know for the kind of forensic you have done, it brings to forth the kind of business that does not exist in actuality but is there on paper, or for that matter, where your interests are not aligned with the management, or you are paying the price of Mercedes while buying Maruti. So you want to avoid those kind of mistakes, but the framework for buying the business pretty much remains the same through the seasons.
Yeah, so basically, as long as you have kept a minimum filter, a low bar, above that, it really boils down to some tweaks on one factor or the other. Sometimes the opportunity size will be very large, valuation might be rich. Sometimes the opportunity size might not be that attractive, but valuations are very attractive. So you would keep it fairly nimble on that front, and I'll not be only one factor oriented. Would that be right way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is important to classify the opportunity you're investing in the right way. So just give you an example, there are 4 types of investing that you can do when you look from opportunity size point of view. Is it a small fish in a small pond, small fish in a large pond, or is it a large fish in a small pond or large fish in a large pond? So some combination of that, and every kind of a classification provides an opportunity to make money. Not to say, but you still want to be associated with the, the best would be to associate with a large fish in a large pond. Now, obviously, opportunity size is only one of it. Then you have to figure out if the quality of the business, is the capital, are they consuming more capital? Is it capital efficient business? Are the management, how good they are at allocating capital? And at the end of it, it's still the risk reward that you have to pay attention to.
Sure, got it. Aniruddha, what about you? What's your broad framework of looking at investment, and particularly in times like these?
I think Ravi very well, he mentioned about the 4 opportunities of, trying to find out that which fish you want to actually own. I think, one thing which is very good about investing is that, the way we look at businesses, it remains unchanged over time and over the different business cycles. In fact, the things that we look in a business we want to own also remains pretty much unchanged across the sectors. In fact, as you mentioned that last year was a difficult time. In fact, the real test of your business evaluation, it happens in these times. One thing I believe is that every business has its time, and a good business invested into the wrong time can actually give a lot of kind of headache to the investors. It will test the patience of investors for a long time, and in fact, many might actually exit from that before the cycle turns. So investors should know that all industries they have these cycles, and no industry is actually immune from it. Even the sectors which we believe are the defensives like pharma and consumer, in fact, they also have their own cycles, and there comes a time when one needs to kind of decrease exposure from them. One thing which has really worked for me wonders in the last several years is the sector rotation, and that is something which I believe the market has rewarded with in the last 4 to 5 years. Things I look in a business are multiple. I'll come to that, but the 2 things which really excites me, and I keep looking for those ideas in a business, is one is the earnings growth picking up after a period of lull, And second is the P multiple expansion, which continues after that. So these are the two deadly combinations which really excites me. One is earnings picking up after a period of lull, which is accompanied by a massive P multiple expansion. Now, if you ask me that, what are the things which I look for the businesses? In fact, the current times is a very difficult time, and obviously things that I would look for the businesses, I would broadly break it up into two parts. One is the macro part, and one is the company specific part. If you ask me about the macro part, I think I need to see that whether the particular sector has gone through a rough patch in the last couple of years, owing to different macro factors. And that is something which really, as an investor for the long run, it really should be someone's focus to pick up the value ideas over there. Also, has the companies in the sector been punished on the valuation front because of maybe there could be some sector headwinds, which might now become the tailwinds for that sector. So one needs to keep an eye on that. And lastly, for the macro factor, I would look for sectors which are actually out of the radar of most people, because that is where the real, the compelling valuations are there. Post this macro factor check, then comes the company specific, which I think, all of us being investors in the market for a very long time, all of us would be kind of, looking at these parameters. Some part of that Ravi already mentioned, but something which really we need to keep looking out for is the scale of opportunity in the business which we are looking at. Which basically means that what I keep seeing is that what is the current execution capability of the business and what is the market size. So can this company get a larger market share in the next couple of years because of its edge over its peers in the industry? For me, the management track record of execution is very, very important. And I think, the last 1 year, we have seen the managements making all types of the hypes. But what really matters is how much of that can get executed. So, when you find unknown companies, the management's making very tall claims, that is something which really is something we need to keep looking out for. So management track record of execution is very important. In fact, the other day I was talking to some people, they're talking about a company which has changed its business almost 4 times in the last 8 years. So when you have these type of businesses, you actually get concerned that, you are in the wrong type of the market. The ROE and the margin profile is something which obviously all of us in the investing world will keep looking out for. We look out for the margin profile ROE to be stable to improving. Also, one exciting thing which really I keep looking out in my businesses is that has the company done a decent capex in the past, and is it now the payoff time? And also, is it doing the capex using its internal cash flows? And also at the same time, decreasing its leverage. So these are like very good combinations that you're putting up fresh capacity using the cash flows. At the same time, your leverage is decreasing drastically. So these are some things which I would keep looking out for the businesses which I would invest in.
Sure. So I think one thing that you mentioned was, just because you're investing in a defensive sector, like say pharma or whatever, IT, consumer, it doesn't mean that you're going to make money all the time. So, you have to also pay the right price for some of these companies. And there will be long periods of times when you will probably not make money on this. So it seems that both for Ravi and you, valuation is also a very important criteria. You're not in the camp where, you can ignore valuation as long as all the other criteria are met, management, opportunity size, and growth runway, and those kind of factors. So just wanted to get a sense from you on now, how do you check whether, or what is your framework on valuation? So how do you, once you have figured out everything else is okay, that, all the other checks meet for you on the business, it's also the right time because you're now getting it at a right price. So for example, maybe IT back in 2015, 16, 17, when it was not such a favored story, or even pharma for that matter at that time. So how do you figure out that now I'm getting it at the right price, and therefore this is the right time to be investing in some of these names?
So basically, the thing what I keep looking out for is that, is the earnings growth growing much higher than what it has grown historically in the last 5 to 6 years? If that earnings growth is much higher, that is where the P multiple expansion will happen. The example you gave of IT now, that is actually one of the sectors which, is kind of the top overweight exposure for me. And that has been for the last almost 8-10 months. Now, if you see what has changed in IT, historically it was growing at single-digit earnings growth. That's why you were getting the small cap companies at 8, 10 P multiple, the mid cap companies at 14, 15, and the large caps at 18, 20 P multiple. Now, what has changed is that the whole earnings growth trajectory of the whole sector has moved up almost like a couple of percentage points. You have companies who are growing at 5, 6% are now reporting 14, 15, 18% earnings growth. And in that process, at the same time, the margins have also improved by 200 to 400 basis points due to the various factors, whether it's work from home, the travel cost, savings. So you have basically both the sides. You have the earnings growth as well as the margin improvement. And that has led to a significant multiple expansion. So it is things like these, what I would keep looking out for, that has the earnings growth trajectory gone up much more than what it has been in the history. The other side of that also works. Like, if you have the earnings growth declining considerably than what it has grown in the past, you see a massive, massive P contraction. And that is something, I keep saying to investors that don't get, so don't fall in love with your companies. Keep an eye on the earnings growth. If the earnings growth is contracting, you should decrease or exit, because if a company is quoting at 50, 60 P, earnings are growing at 18, 20%. If that earnings growth comes off from 20% to even 15% and it continues to grow faster in the industry, still the P contraction will happen. So we need to keep an eye on both P expansion as well as the P contraction, which will be a follow-up of the earnings growth and the earnings decline.
So Ravi, what's your thoughts on this final choice of price that you pay for some of these companies? When does the valuation become the right time at the right price?
Yeah, so Amit, for us, valuation is art, and you cannot boil it down to a number. Mathematically, you can put a P ratio to it, but what happens is if there is a elongated period of time where the earnings have been collapsing, just like it's happened for the entire Indian economy, the corporate profits have been declined for the past decade, and then looking at the current P multiple can be very misleading. So honestly, valuation is a lot of art, and the way I would like to look at it is compare the size of the company to the size of the opportunity at that point of time, and what is the probability of that opportunity panning out over the next 5-7 years. So in 2009 everything was available cheap, March 2009, post global financial crash. But if you had gone and seen, let's say, an Asian Paints or a Titan, the P multiple for those companies would still be in high 20s, and high 20s at that point of time when everything is available sub 10p would look very expensive to you. But that was absolutely a fantastic point to be buying. It was probably available at a 5,000 crore market cap. So absolute size of Asian Paints as compared to the market that it was addressing will give you a lot of sense of how cheap that valuation is. So we should not get too obsessed about the current P multiples, but look at the larger picture, take a step back, look at the forest, and then see whether this particular tree how large can it grow. So that will give you a sense, and you have to make it an act of wisdom, as my, that's the thing that we follow. Don't make it precise, don't make it accurate. It's okay to be approximately right than to be, absolutely wrong.
Yeah. So, and sometimes you make this investments and you think that you've got a company, it fits all your criteria, and you think you also got it at the right time. You paid a good price. It's not a challenge. And then you see that there has been a elongated period of the business not performing as per your expectation, and because of that, maybe the stock price itself has not gone anywhere, or maybe even have gone down. So how do you change your thinking? Do you try to reduce your allocation? Do you sell such a company? How do you think about investment that you have made, and where the thesis, at least in the short period that you have, maybe say a couple of years or 2-3 years that you've invested in, has not panned out?
Yeah, I'll just say, see, perfect timing happens only for fools and liars. There are not many people who can absolutely time it all the time. Sure, you can get lucky sometimes, but it is over a decade, over a couple of decades, when you have been tracking a sector and an industry, and what are the drivers of that particular industry. If I were to talk with just a little bit of example, One particular company that we've invested in some time back is called Praj Industries. Now, the scenario for ethanol, scenario for compressed biogas, scenario for sugar industry, which is the consumer industry for this equipment, had been languishing for the longest period of time. But post 2017-18, when the government started, giving a lot of push to these programs to develop sustainability, then you can see that suddenly the sustainability of the business is coming up. The opportunity size is getting realized. It is not just a pie in the sky. So at that point of then you see that then it does not matter that 10 years of no growth in that company does not matter. You have to look at what is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. So in period when the stars are not yet aligned, when it is still kind of in a wishy-washy state, what we do is usually take a tracking position. We take a small position and keep tracking. And over a period of time, you will realize that X, Y, Z, ABC, things are falling in place. And now it has reached a stage from where you can, the things can start exploding. And that's when you really push the pedal and back up the truck and take a big position. So I think this is the only way in which you can actually time it. There is no way to exactly enter at that time when you believe that, and you will always be, there are many times you'll be wrong also. There's no way that you buy and things have to go right immediately. If that happens, it's pure luck.
Sure. So let me now get into maybe what the second part of the panel discussion, which is, we understood how do you go about selecting right businesses, or how do you evaluate stuff to invest in. But now the question of, given what we know about the current scenario, things, how they're panning, recovery from COVID and all of that, what is the investments or businesses or sectors that we should be looking at as of now? I'll probably start with Anirudh. So what, in your view, is areas of interest that you'll be looking at, specific industries, companies that you could talk about?
Yeah, sure. So, so basically, the points which I was mentioning about that, we need to see things around us and, how things are shaping up. Now, if I take an extension of that and see what has been the business environment in the last 10, 12 months, one sector which comes up there in the top is the whole transformation which we are seeing in the IT implementation in the world. And that is something which I believe is one sector investors need to keep an eye on, because what is happening is that, we are seeing the implementation of IT across different walks of life, whether it is the banking system, the hospitals, even the media and entertainment. We are seeing even a disaster management. So it's being implemented across. Now, if you see the type of order books and the type of deal wins most of the Indian IT companies are having, I think, it's giving you a picture that where this sector is going to be for the next 18 to 24 to 36 months. And I think it's a big earnings upcycle, which we are going to see in this whole sector. And it will kind of take all the companies, whether it's a small cap, mid cap, or a large cap company. So IT is one sector which definitely we believe is a business one should be overweight on. The second sector, which definitely it's been the hot favorite for the last 1 year for all the right reasons, but I believe it's just the beginning and it's going to see multiple uplegs, is the whole Indian API industry. So obviously you can say that the valuations of many companies looks very expensive, but if you look at the whole opportunity which is there, the Indian API players from being the pharmacy to the US is now transforming to being the pharmacy to the world. And that is going to open a large number of opportunity. The whole China Plus One opportunity, the PLI scheme which the government has announced, the capex plans which most of the companies have announced. If you put all of those numbers in Excel, I think we are looking at 18 to 20% plus types of an earnings growth for the next 24 to 36 months. So pharma API, healthcare space, along with the specialty chemicals. So this is one space which might look expensive in some pockets, but I think there are still many good companies out there which have multiple the room to expand. One sector which is kind of a contrarian sector, if I have to say, because very few investors when I talk to they like that sector, is the real estate sector, and that is something which I believe after a period of 7 to 8 years is now coming out of the woods. The worst is behind for that sector. If you look at the transactions of the property deals happening now compared to what it used to happen 7, 8 years back, I think 7, 8 years back, we had more of the investors who were buying the properties. Compared to this time around, we have more of the end users buying. So this is going to be a much more sustainable kind of improvement in the cash flows for most of the companies in the real estate sector. Other thing which is helping is the low interest rate environment. And also one thing we are seeing is the whole unorganized to organized shift in this sector, wherein we are seeing many of the marginal players moving out of the space. They are getting acquired by the larger organized companies. And this is something I believe another sector which has a large headroom to growth. So I would put IT, pharma chemicals, and the real estate sector as the spaces which definitely give me a lot of upside potential from these levels.
Sure. So again, I have a lot of things to come back to you on that, but I'll just first also get Ravi's inputs on specific areas that you find quite interesting right now.
Yeah. So, to give you a perspective on which areas we are looking at, I'm going to just give you a little gist of what our worldview is. So, we believe that for the past decade, Indian economy has been pretty much in a cleanup phase. The excesses of the 2003 to 8 cycle, when everybody went overboard with investment in power or real estate and all those things, are still getting cleaned up. Indian corporates are delevered like never before. The corporate balance sheets are clean up. So if our view is, which it is, that economy is going to pick up and we are going to have a multi-year corporate profit cycle growth, then obviously you have to position yourself to where the puck is going to be. I agree with a lot of sectors that Anirudh mentioned, but I'm just going to mention a couple that he didn't say, and I'll probably add to the real estate piece that he said. One is the profit pool of capital goods has shrunk from over $10 billion to less than $1 billion. And this space, I think it's been over 12 years now that this space has seen any kind of wealth creation. So this is a very fertile area for one to start looking at. Manufacturing is going to be the focus of this government. There are PLI-led sectors. And of course, that there are good companies available where already the brownfield capex has started. Maybe we are a year or so early into a full-fledged pickup in the capex cycle, but already you can identify companies that are early beneficiary of that. So capex is one thing. On the real estate side, I agree with what Anirudh said, that we are at the bottom of the cycle. We used to sell about 4.5 lakh units a year. It went all the way down to probably near to 2 lakh units. And affordability and interest rates are at a really, really low level. We have never seen less than a sub 7% home loan rates. So, but earlier in the real estate boom, there was a lot of investment-led demand. I don't think that investment-led demand is coming back. This is going to be a consumption-led and more a volume-driven game rather than a pricing-driven game. So there is another way to play the real estate sector also through the home improvement category. And there are sectors that are focused on home improvement where the similar amount of consolidation in the sector is happening, where the smaller guys are losing out and the larger guys are winning more market share, or the stronger guys, maybe not larger. It's not the absolute size that matters. It's the balance sheet that strength that matters. So that is another thing. So these are two areas where I believe the puck is going to be over the next 5-7 years, and generally an economic revival is what we would like to play over the next 5 years.
Sure. So let me, play a little bit of devil's advocate here. So all the areas that both of you have mentioned. So now let me say areas like, say, IT services or pharmaceuticals or specialty chemicals, they have been phenomenal, returns generators over the last couple of years, especially the post-COVID rally for some of these sectors. Now, the question that I have is, are some of these areas now too consensus buys, that we have now gone from a situation where these companies had no takers at even, say, low double-digit P multiples, to now some of these companies trading at double-digit price to sales multiples? So, you have Alkyl Amines, which 2-3 years back used to trade at less than 20 times P, but now trades at maybe 12 times price to sales. Similarly, a lot of mid-cap IT, now some of these listings like Happiest Minds, which have happened, are now trading at 100 times PE kind of. So isn't this now becoming a situation where, while the story might be very attractive from a sectoral point of view, from a business point of view, but the valuation just doesn't leave any upside? Why would you say that while the valuation has gone up for some of these names, but the price is still very attractive for the next 4-5 years returns? So Ravi,
I would put it.
Ravi, if you can go on that. Okay,
Sure.
sorry, Anirudh, if you go first.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah, no, so you are absolutely right about how the valuations have moved for specialty chemical sectors, and the kind of euphoria can be seen from some of the IPOs that are coming up and the kind of valuations being assigned to that. Now, having said that, the story, as you said, still remains good. I don't think we have still not seen a really large chemical company out of India, which will be of global scale, where we can compare them with the BASF and DuPont Dows of the world. So in that sense, there is still a long runway, but this might not be the most attractive entry point for specialty chemical companies for sure. So, and also what is happening is right now market is spraying everyone with the same brush, whether it is a specialty chemical or a commodity chemical, it is very difficult to figure out. So it is only when the tide will turn that we will figure out which were the more sustainable earnings and which were the earnings which are not very sustainable. So a lot of price-led improvement in the P&L is at risk. So absolutely right. There are risks present in this particular area.
So again, my point was not just about specialty chemicals, but a lot of the areas which have become popular because of this post-COVID period, be it even IT services, a TCS, which used to get barely 22, 23 times PE multiple, now it trades at 33, 34 times PE multiple. Some of the mid-cap IT names trade at really rich PE multiples. So the entire basket of the, I would say, the popular sectors are now getting recognized for the sustainability of growth that they have. So Anirudh, why? Because you mentioned IT-enabled services as a area of interest. Why would you think that price is still attractive and this is the right time even now?
So I would put it in this way that, most of these sectors which you mentioned about, whether it's IT, pharma, or the chemical, from being the deep value buy, they have come into the being the growth stocks. So they are no longer the value stocks. So I would say they are the growth stocks. The other way to see it is that if I'm comparing the IT services earnings growth compared to the consumer discretionary earnings growth and compare the multiples which the consumer discretionary companies are getting, I think there's one argument that if a consumer company growing at 8-10% can get a 40-50 P, then why can't an IT company growing at 15% get a 30 P? So it's all about what is the relative valuation you want to pay. Like do I want to pay a 40 P to a consumer company growing at 8-10%, or do I want to pay a 30 P to an IT company where I see the growth opportunity over the next 36 months wherein it can grow at 14-15%? Now, same thing I would say for the chemical company. Definitely, it was very easy to pick up a good chemical company 8-10 months back. As of now, as both of you rightly mentioned, it's very difficult to find what will give you the alpha. But if you look at the opportunity, I think it's huge. If I just give you the numbers, if only around 8-10% of the Chinese volume comes to India, we are going to see kind of a 100% jump in our capacity. Now, that is the type of scale which we can see over the next 48 to 60 months. Obviously, I'm not saying that we'll eat away into 8-10% of the Chinese volume, but even if that type of a shift or migration happens, and definitely we'll be reaching somewhere there, because if you look at the kind of the capex plans which most of the companies have done, whether it's the large companies or the mid-sized companies, I think definitely we are going to see the next 36 to 48 months of 15% north, 18% north type of an earnings growth. And then it's a question that, do I want to pay a 50p stock? Do I want to pay a 50p multiple to a company growing at 8-10%, or do I pay a 30p to a company growing at 18-20%? So it's, I think, more about what you want to pick and choose in this whole area.
Sure.
Happiest Mind you mentioned, I think, it's something, it's beyond our understanding, like, how can you pay such high valuation? So I think you'll have those exceptions in the market anyways.
Yeah. So basically, I think what both of you are saying is that yes, there might be areas in these industries where there are excesses and where there is euphoria that is playing out, and especially what Ravi mentioned, that many of these specialty chemicals companies might not be specialty chemicals. These might just really be commodities, but everything is getting painted with the same brush because they are seeing good earnings growth right now. So only when the tide goes will we see really what is actually going to be end up creating value over the next 4-5 years. So that's the picture, that while the overall there might be parts of the market which might seem expensive in these industries, but still this opportunity size is so attractive that you can still find enough ideas which might deliver really good returns in some of these areas. So now, and this is, I think we can't ignore this question, that something extraordinary is now happening in the Indian market, where you now have a company like Zomato, which is set to go public. And while we have had a lot of IPOs and in the last 1 year, and a lot of them coming in at fairly rich valuations, but this will be the first time where we'll be having a company which is so losing money to such a large extent, will be coming in at probably almost a $10 billion market cap if it does get listed. We've had obviously the Burger Kings of the world, but in terms of the profit losses that they have, it's much smaller compared to, say, a Zomato. So how do both of you look at some of these new age businesses that are now getting listed? Would these be areas of interest that you would be looking at, and would you be interested in buying them, especially at the prices which they are coming in to the market? Anirudh, if you can go ahead with that.
Yeah, sure. So I think, the Indian market for the first time, it is getting exposed to what the US market and investors have always been accustomed to, wherein, you had the startups making billion-dollar losses getting listed at, multi-billion the valuations. I think this is a very different zone. And, companies like these cannot be valued the traditional way like we used to value all the other companies. So I would say, being a bit conservative investor, I typically would avoid such companies, but it's not that these companies are bad. Definitely there would be enough appetite for these companies, but I would say, these companies have to be valued in a very different way. They have to be seen more as a private equity investment you are doing, and, you cannot make a large allocation to such businesses, because if you go by all the cash flows, the valuation justification, if I look at the cash flows which the company has to do in the next 48 months in order to justify the current valuations, it goes above my head. So, I would be typically away from it, but definitely there would be enough appetite, because, these are businesses wherein they don't go by the profitability, they go by the opportunity of, what they can do in the country of our size. And, when you're catering to a few 100 million customers every day. So it's like very difficult for me to actually take a call on how I want to value these companies.
So basically it's good business. It seems very attractive from a business point of view, maybe not from the cash flow and profitability. And therefore, maybe you will stay away from something like a Zomato. Ravi, what's your thoughts on not just Zomato, but entire this consumer internet wave that we are likely to see, be it Zomato, Policybazaar, or Paytm, that are likely to come into the market over the next 12 months?
So, Amit, first of all, this is enabled, rightfully, as Anirudh said, is enabled by private equity money, cheap money. Now, we could have had the same view 5 years back, 10 years back, when these businesses were still evolving, and we have seen this movie playing out in US. So no doubt about it, the large value migration is happening from the erstwhile brick and mortar to this new age platform tech companies. Having said that, a lot of it is enabled by cheap money. And for some reason, if tomorrow this cheap money was to recede, then for sure questions will be asked about the profitability. And but having said that, I would like to say, if you are still an early stage investor, you will still have a good runway to play from this point of time. I can see this is an area which is right where possibly a frenzy can come and everybody will feel left out. We have seen this kind of movie panning out in the .com bubble as well. So it is slightly different from .com. It is not eyeballs that we are talking about or clicks, but we are talking about actual business models, but business models where the unit economics not everywhere is still in place. So if you find a business model where unit economics is in place, so for example, Amazon was not profitable for a period of 10-15 years, but they were throwing cash. The unit economics were always there. Essentially, the game was to outlast their competitor and gain so much size that others can't come in, and that was the moat they were building. So if you find a business model like that in this space, then even that will be a big value creator. So I would say don't write off this space just because of valuation. You still have to pick and choose. Be sure of what is the moat of that particular business. A lot of wealth is going to be created, and there will be one reality check somewhere down the line also for these companies. So you are going to be at the edge, and you are going to be going at 140 kilometers per hour. So you better be, you should learn how to handle the steering at that speed.
Yeah. So basically, there can be FOMO and playing out in some of these companies, because this is the first time that some of these companies are getting listed.
Absolutely.
The earlier consumer internet companies that we've had, the InfoEdge, the Just Dials of the world, they had traditional profitability and cash flows to support their valuation. But now we are talking about just strong growth, runways, and those kind of factors coming to the picture. So now, we're probably running out of time now in the last 5 minutes in this panel. So I want to probably end with, so we now discussed a lot of areas of interest, which should be looked at in the current scenario. But what would be the areas that you would like to avoid at the given time? Which are the businesses or industries which you would stay away, and you think others should also stay away because of XYZ reasons? Ravi, what would your areas to be away from be right now?
Yeah, so definitely IPOs is one particular area where I would say be wary. I'm not saying completely avoid. I would say be very picky and choosy. There will be, as you rightly said, there is a frenzy, and I'm not going, there will be a frenzy, and I'm not saying you become part of the frenzy. So you want to keep your head stable. There will still be good business models coming which are profitable. So for example, we had a couple of listings in the tech platform space last year, which were profitable businesses. They were not cash burning businesses. So if you do find a business like that, and it is still small in absolute size in relation to the opportunity that it is addressing, then it's a decent enough bet. But where the unit economics are shaky, avoid. Also, the IPOs are going to be hot not only in the tech platform space, but even in some of the conventional sector. We are going to see some really crazy valuations. That is going to probably lead to the whole listed space also probably getting a leg up because of that. Be careful about that. And third, we spoke about specialty chemical earlier. I think in general in market, the risk is of scalability, the underappreciated risk. A lot of the companies are a beneficiary of a rising tide. You really want to identify a company that will withstand a downturn. And so that is where the value creation is likely to be more solid and more enduring rather than a transient wealth creation. So that is the challenge from this point on.
Anirudh, what's your thoughts on areas to avoid?
So the first one will be, as mentioned by Ravi, which is avoid companies which are coming out with IPOs at obscene valuations. If you get a company quoting at an obscene valuation, please evaluate a company which is already listed, doing much better, and you're getting at a better valuation. So that would be kind of the first thing. The second thing, which I would say a very, very kind of, it's a request, I keep saying this to investors, is avoid the WhatsApp tips which keep coming. Because, that is something which we are seeing, it's kind of hitting the roof. And don't enter into something which you are not aware what the company does, what is the growth plan, what is the valuation. So when you see, all these, the microcap companies hitting 15-20% upper circuits, those are the areas which I would tell investors to be very, very aware of what they are getting into, because the difficult part is to make an exit from these companies. So entry is the easier part, exit is the difficult part. So that would be kind of the two areas I would warn investors to be very careful of.
Yeah, Amit, I just would like to add one more thing over there. So there are some companies that in the previous cycle had leveraged themselves to the hilt, and now everybody is talking about a turnaround over there. I would say be very, very skeptical. Turnarounds don't happen overnight. 1 out of 10 is a very good ratio of turnaround. So definitely do not build a portfolio of turnarounds, and even the one that you very carefully bet on, be very, very skeptical. Not all businesses are going to turn around.
So I think Ravi, earlier, very early in the discussion, you had mentioned that as long as you keep a lower bar, anything above that should be an area of interest. Now, wouldn't that be true that even now there's a tendency for a lot of people that once the earlier quality basket has become very expensive, they keep lowering the bar. Let's go to the next level, which has not rallied. Let's go to the next level. So is that also an area that people should be wary about, that do not go below a certain? So what you mentioned, companies which had leveraged themselves to build had been destroyed because of that kind of leverage, and now suddenly talking about now they will revive because of the leverage having come down. So some of these problems, do they reflect fundamental business problems and not just a problem about leverage that is underlying the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you cannot go down the quality curve beyond a point. And finally, the economics of the business matter. So if the company that we are talking about, it is in a space that is fundamentally sound and can generate, it can add economic value, basically earn ROCs above its cost of capital, then that space has a potential. But make that your starting point and don't go ahead and bet just because suddenly now there is a revival in the economic sentiment. So absolutely right. You cannot go beyond a certain bar. Don't go. There are companies where the debt to EBITDA is still above 4x, 5x, 10x kind of levels. Just because economic cycle is reviving doesn't mean that particular sector is going to revive. And those are the ones that when the tide recedes, you will realize that they were swimming naked.
Thanks a lot, Ravi, for that. And thanks a lot, Anirudh. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Sorry, just to butt in with one more statement, that any stock that we would have spoken about, a disclaimer from our end, it is just for illustration purposes and not an advice.
Goes without saying. So participants, please ensure this is more for learning about how to think about investing rather than stock tips per se. Thank you, Anirudh, and thank you, Ravi. I enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Amit.
Take care.
Thanks, Amit.